Welcome, I'm the DeadwoodJedi. This is another Raid Shadow Legends video, and we got real-time arena available today, which is very cool. I'm part of this like beta test, I guess, that they have. I didn't plan this. I just opened up the game and there it was. So I thought what I could do is go through a few fights, show you guys what live arena is. Now I did record this originally and my audio was absolutely trash, so I'm dubbing over all of this. And not in the funny way. I'm just kind of covering it. Now, it's been very interesting, I thought. You know, the whole process of it, the picking the champions that you decide to keep, who you ban, all of it is actually really challenging, way more so than typical arena, because you can't craft the perfect team and it becomes really hard to do. And one of the big lessons I learned early on was that the biggest key, I think, is making sure that all 5 champions can work minus any one of them, because you don't really know who the opponent's going to ban. And so having that flexibility is really important. Also, because you also don't know exactly who the enemy's bringing, having a little bit of, you know, I typically say, you know, build your champions to the 9s, right? If damage dealer, all damage. You got to build in a little bit of survivability. But anyway, you can kind of see as we're going to go through this here. So as we look, we found an opponent, right? Yay, let's get ready. We'll jump on in. And one of the interesting things, of course, is that, you know, you got to figure out who you're picking first. And so I'm done. I think we're going to see about 5 fights that I did. Some of them are shorter than others. Some of them are a little bit longer. They all kind of vary in that sense. But the basic idea is that, you know, I'm trying to make sure that I have at least 2 damage dealers. So if one gets banned, I have somebody else to do damage. And then the rest of it is some kind of support. But it's tricky, right? Do I go for speed? Do I go for survivability? Do I try to reset cooldowns? Or do I try to, you know, debuff the enemy, CC skills? It's kind of tricky to figure it all out, honestly. And so I was playing with some champions, and like obviously some of these are new champions for me. Pythion, Yorgid, these are champions that I haven't really used a lot of before. So I was kind of experimenting a little bit with that and some ideas that I had. And I'm definitely gonna have to go back to the drawing board to rebuild these, because there's some, the style of teams you face is pretty varied and you need to be prepared for almost any of them. So figuring that part out was a bit of a challenge. I found Necrit to be incredibly OP and definitely is going to be one of my top picks going forward. Same thing with Yumeko. When you have a chance to reset enemy cooldowns, obviously that's really massive. Warlord, Yumeko are really great at that. And Necrit can help keep your, you know, your soft nukers really keep them alive. So if I'm going to go with somebody like a Baron or a Yorgid, who are really kind of petite in their builds, I need someone like a Necrit there. But the problem is Necrit can get banned. So then what do you do if he gets banned? And that becomes really where the trick of it lies. But you can see in this first fight, right, I'm spending a lot of time. I'm also not hitting that confirm button, which is something that you want to be able to do to keep speed things along. I kind of forget about that. You got a minute to pick your champions, which is actually a pretty long time when it really comes down to it. But it's very easy to run through it, right, when you're like debating choices and stuff. So just making sure to hit that confirm button is going to make everybody's life a lot better. Getting through 5 fights wasn't that hard. There's no 30 minutes whatsoever. That's not going to be the issue in these 2-hour windows. So that's not, I'm not really as concerned about that. I feel like if you can bring in 2 damage dealers, you have a pretty good chance of, you know, winning your fights. But then it became, you know, who else was I going to pick? As you can see, I took my 2 damage dealers first, and I think that's actually probably, it's possible that that's important, but whatever your linchpin as your team is, that's going to be one of your last picks, I think. So Pythion goes in here, and then I think I take Ursuga as well. I went, you know, full survivability, and obviously they have a Hegemon, which is something I'm probably not gonna ban Hegemon because I'm not threatened by him so much. So Pythion becomes a perfect counter to that. What happens if they ban Pythion? Let's not talk about that, right? So there's definitely some issues like I have to sort out too, as far as like, you know, I think when you're building this team, you take your 5 champions, and then you go through and you go, okay, which one can I do without? And you go through each and every one, and does your team still work? Can you still counter certain teams? If not, what kind of changes do you need to make? And that's where you start to figure out what your linchpin champions are, which are the ones that are going to work no matter what teams you're going against, those sort of things. And I think that's going to be really important because you don't know who the enemy is going to have. And it'll also help inform you on who you need to ban going forward. So like this team, they don't really have any nukers outside Leorius, right? And so immediately that's my number one ban there. And it doesn't matter how strong the rest of the team is, I'm going to be able to take them down. I believe they ban, I don't know who they're going to take out here. Yeah, they took out Necrit, which again makes it a little bit scary, right? So if I can survive and get Gjorgid or Baron to take their turn, I'm in a much better spot. But I have to be able to survive to that point. Ursuga, Pythion, they're both really helpful for that, but you know, it can get a little bit dicey, and it gets a little dicey here for sure. But because I took out their main damage dealer, I wasn't nearly as concerned going forward. And you're going to see Pythion here is going to be able to cleanse all those debuffs from Hegemon, so I'm not worried about that at all. Even in, you know, it's more just about survival at this point. Thankfully, Ursuga's there, very helpful champion, right? There we go, right? Cleanse all that. Now I no longer have to worry about debuffs. Champions like Chagur is not going to be an issue for me. It's going to be surviving, and that's definitely an issue for me. But with the team that we're facing here, you know, they didn't bring in, you know, they're figuring it out too. So they didn't bring their top damage dealers, and so then I'm able to come in with Baron, pretty much win the game, right? At that point, so it's pretty over here. But it's simple fight and effective, right? Gjorgid, I think, is gonna just one shot this guy at this point, yeah. And we're good to go on that. That's the first fight, nice and easy. Then we get to the second fight, and this one is definitely a longer one, right? Ended up facing an opponent that went the tanky route, and I actually ended up going the tanky route against him because I wanted to try something different, right? And so you're going to see that here. I realized my first one, I was like, oh, Necrit's really important. So we're going to go ahead and pick Necrit first on our squad, and that can kind of inform the enemy maybe that I'm going slow, that I'm going to have a real kind of flimsy nuker on my team. That's certainly an approach I can take with this, right? But, you know, I think one of the things that we're going to want to think about is like, what does my selection indicate to the enemy? And then what do their selections indicate back? If we look at something actually similar, like Texas Hold'em, poker, right? When you make a certain bet, that's indicating something to your opponents. And then they make a bet back that indicates something about them. And so we kind of are taking that approach here with our champions. Every pick we make is saying something. And the way, because it's kind of a snake draft, right? We pick one, they pick two, we pick two, they pick two, we pick one, right? Like whatever, however it works like that. But like, because of that, you have options as far as tipping your hand, right? Right here, I can go slow or I can go fast. I still haven't tipped my hand even at this point. Though at this point, if I really don't want to tip my hand, I need to bring in a damage dealer, right? That's going to be my next pick. Because what I can do here, I could bring in a damage dealer with this squad and a speed. And then on my next two pick, I can bring in a second damage dealer and a speed champion. And now they don't know which way I'm going to go. Am I going to go fast? Am I going to go slow and tanky? I could potentially do both. But here I've clearly shown what I'm planning on doing, right? We got Pythion, who's slow. I've got Ursuga. I've got Necrit, and none of them are damage dealers. So clearly my next two picks have to be those damage dealers. And clearly I'm not going to be going fast, right? I can build them fast, don't get me wrong, but a speed attack is not going to be my main focus here. And they've got their Warlord, which is obviously who I'm going to be banning. That's somebody I definitely don't want to face. I could try to take out Rhodos. He's still an amazing damage dealer, and that could be an approach too. And if I brought in somebody that had strong A1s, right, we're talking Candrafon, Leorius, champions that I don't, or like I end up doing Mortu and Mountain King, I'm like, at this point, do I care if Warlord goes? In the end, I decided that yes, I do care. But I could have very easily left Warlord in this team, and I don't think it would have been an issue. In fact, that's probably what I should have done, is ban somebody like a Rhodos, a big damage dealer, let him be taken out of the equation and deal with Rhodos in turn. Because I have strong A1 champions or passive ability champions, I shouldn't have to worry about it. And so they pick Kyoku here. Their only damage dealer really is Rhodos, and I make the mistake of not banning him like I should have. And that, I think, would have made this fight a lot faster. As it is, I gave them a pretty solid team, but it didn't matter, right? They took out my Mortar Macabre, but with the squad I have with Mountain King, it's really just a matter of time. So this fight is slow, but it's effective because I do have the champions in there. And I made sure to have two damage dealers, right? The one thing I love about bringing in champions like Mortu, like Mountain King is I can actually put things like shield sets on them and allow them to be really helpful for keeping my team alive, right? In fact, I think champions like Mountain King, champions like Mortar Macabre, champions like oh gosh, what's his name? The Magnar I think could be really, really effective here because they're high HP champions, they're good survivability champions. You don't even need a lot of buffs on them to make them work. They can be extremely, extremely helpful for builds for teams like this where you don't know exactly what you're facing, right? So if you pick wrong, if you get it wrong, they still have a very strong ability to be able to survive and come in and hit and keep the rest of your team alive, which I think is just as important. So definitely there's a lot of, more than a few ways to go about doing this and to be effective with it. But it is going to come down to picking those 5 champions and picking them in the right order, right? Maybe not the right order, but having that synergy between them. This Mountain King Mortu combination so far seems to me to be the best synergy. I love the Pythion, I love the Ursuga, I love the Necrit as well, though I am fairly tempted to swap Necrit out for, say, a Siffy, right? Or somebody else that can, do some passive healing. Maybe an Elva would be a great option here. In fact, on the other hand, I could do the same thing with Ursuga and sub her out. One of the great things about Necrit is you get some ally attacks in there. That's not too shabby. One of the other things, though, that's I'm finding very interesting is while in arena, like the meta's always, for a while now has been go really slow. Let the reaction gear do its work. I do feel like there's a big advantage to having speed on your team because these are imperfect squads. Being able to go a little bit faster, being able to go before the enemy can take their turn isn't a bad thing. Obviously reaction gear is going to be really strong. It's really powerful. Still is, that hasn't changed, but that is something to kind of keep in mind. I feel like the metas around this are going to change and change rapidly until we really figure out exactly what's working. I don't think the metas are going to be very different from what we have in Classic Arena, but I do feel like we're going to be able to take advantage of some of the flaws within that. When you have champions built for Classic Arena a certain way, and now there's tossed into a team where the setup isn't ideal, it's going to really be interesting to see how we're able to exploit those differences. And so you're going to see some accounts that are built for real-time arena versus Classic Arena, and you're going to see a lot of different variations in those builds. I think that's really interesting. Anyway, this is a very long fight, so let's speed this one up so you guys can kind of see how it goes. But basically, Mountain King does some work. I'm gonna want to build him stronger because I feel like Mountain King's gonna have a little bit of revival. Definitely a good champion to bring into this type of team. Maybe not a god tier champion by any means, but HP based, single target, very heavy damage dealing champion is definitely somebody that's gonna have some strong advantages, I feel like, in this current meta. Okay, then we get to the third team that we fought. Again, we're just trying some different stuff here, right? So I'm trying to mix it up a little bit, and definitely not all my runs were successful. I definitely made some mistakes along the way, but I feel like that's how you learn the most, is through the mistakes themselves. And I think that's kind of interesting, right, in its own right. But yeah, we've got, in this one, I start off with, at this point, I'm like, okay, let's try choosing some of my meta champions, right? Some of my main clan or main arena champions that I use. So like Kaimar, I think we're gonna bring in Yumeko, who I absolutely love, my Siffy, who's super fast, and see how this works and see what happens when champions get canceled along the way, right? And so that's kind of the approach that I end up taking here. And it's interesting. I don't know if it's great, but it's definitely interesting approach for sure. Now, one of the things I don't love, like one of the things I love about this is, right, like you don't have to worry about dupes, right? I think bronze, absolutely, that's what it should be. In gold, there's no repeats. Oh, by the way, yeah, I took Ragash. I really like Ragash. I feel like there's some potential there. Both as a debuffer or as a damage dealer or like as a hybrid build, which I have kind of here. But what I love about gold is obviously, you know, if I pick a champion, you can't pick them. And I think that's a really cool concept. What I think is going to be really interesting, what I would love to see actually is like in silver is I can no longer choose my own dupes, right? I feel like, I'm not sure if I can or can't in this. I'm kind of waiting to see. I already picked, I think I already picked Siphi. I think I'm about to pick Yumeko here. But yeah, see, I can pick my other Siphi if I wanted to. So I could use dupes on my own account. And I feel like that's kind of, right? I would really prefer to have it be something where it's not, you know, like I feel like at silver, there's no dupes from your own account. Bronze, you can use whatever. But silver, like, okay, now we have to choose individual champions. Just to give it a little differentiation, right? And kind of build us up towards that a little bit would be nice. But we'll see, right? This is still kind of in beta. They're still testing it out. You know, it's going to take me a minute here before I figure out, oh yeah, I should just use Yumeko and call it a day. There we go. So now they have to choose who they're going to ban from my team. It's going to be, you know, Kymar, Yumeko. It's going to be a real question, but it doesn't really matter for my squad, right? If they choose to ban Kymar, my Siphi's probably fast enough to go first anyway. If they choose to ban my Yumeko, then I'm going to have Ragash stun the enemy after Kymar sleeps and strips them, right? And so it doesn't, like, that's kind of the beauty of this team is it doesn't matter who gets taken out. If Siphi gets taken out, my Kymar's probably still fast enough, maybe fast enough, right, to be able to put them to sleep. Now here I have to ban a champion, and this is where it gets tricky, but I figure, look, I'll go first if I take out their Arbiter. That's the big thing, and so that's what I do, and it becomes kind of a wrap after that point, right? Eventually I realize, well, actually I don't realize, I kind of forget that I'm supposed to be banning somebody, and so the computer takes over after a certain amount of time because I just forgot. So they ban Arbiter, but that's absolutely the choice I would have done here, right? Just because they brought in basically too much protection and damage. They basically brought in the go second team, and I was like, fine, I'll go first. And so you can see they banned Kymar. Doesn't matter. I've got Yumeko here. I'm going to cancel out all their skills, and then I can, you know, and Siphi's still probably going to go first because she's so fast. And then I'll go to town with the rest of my champions, and it'll be a wrap. And that's kind of the idea that goes on here. In fact, yeah, so there you go. Speed up, boom, no problem. Reset their cooldowns. And now it's a wrap at this point. Even with the stone skin, it doesn't matter because the skills are all reset, right? And so I just take a little bit of time figuring out exactly what I'm going to do, but at this point, it's pretty much done. I can even use Ragash's, you know, strengthen buff and stuff like that, waiting for the stone skin to expire, but it takes so long. We actually are able to beat the stone skin down on our own anyway, so we can we'll speed this up and get to the next one. Okay, so we started off 3 for 3, really good beginning, and then it all started to go downhill as I started to face both tougher opponents and also poorer choices on my part, right? As we're starting to figure out exactly how this works, and I'm still, you know, I don't even know really. Like I'm still trying to figure it out myself and try to putting together good combinations. That last team, pretty solid. It was pretty solid, but what happens when you face a really good squad, right? They start off with a +3 Duchess. Already I know I'm in major issue. I'm gonna have major problems going forward here, but I decided to go with my slow squad, right? We go Pythion, we go Necrit. I'm like, these two are great in OP. That's how we're gonna take down these Duchess teams. Clearly I wasn't paying enough attention. Mistakes were made. That's okay. You know, they go ahead and they make their picks and then so on and so forth. And we kind of, it's not the best approach, and I definitely make some mistakes along the way, which is not to be surprised, right? but they go Baron and then they go Mithrala. And at this point, I'm like, okay, well, they're definitely going slow and tanky, right? Mithrala, Duchess, probably pretty slow. Although I am also keeping in mind, Duchess has got a speed aura. If they utilize a speed aura, so I opt for my 2 damage dealers, right? Gorgid and Baron, my 2 big damage dealers. The issue, of course, is they're slow and they're real scrawny, right? So protecting them can be extra tough, and that's definitely something I run into when I'm doing this fight here. Mistakes were definitely made going through this. They go Siphi and they go Rotos. Great combo to finish it out. Honestly, I feel like everybody should just finish their teams off with the Siphi Rotos combo. I finish off with Ursuga, trying to get as much protection as I can. And this is where I make a mistake. Ban phase. I go, who do I ban? Well, Duchess, obviously. Probably not the choice to make. I think I chose Duchess in this, but like every one of those is a tough one. I probably should have gone. Actually, I don't even know who I should have gone with. But there's a strong argument to be said that maybe Rotos would be a good one. I ended up going for Baron. The issue with Baron, and as they ban my neck grit, which is definitely an issue for me. The issue with banning Baron is Baron has that first single attack that's really, really strong. But with Pythion and Ursuga, I felt like maybe I could have survived that. The harder issue is that Rotos gets attack after attack after attack, and I have some very weak champions, right? And so that's kind of, for me, that seemed to be the bigger issue. They also go first, which is definitely going to be a problem for me. Pythion here, gets to interrupt a little bit, but this is where the problem is. I have champions that are just too slow. Both my Baron and my Gorgid are too slow. They don't get an attack, and their Rotos just wipes through me. Look at that. Destroys right there. Destroys right there. And this is my issue. I have 2 damage dealers that are too squishy to actually survive and then deal damage. And so at that point, it's a wrap. I know it's a wrap. Like, even if I bring them back with Pythion, they're never going to get a turn fast enough to get an attack in. If I could get even just 1 attack from them, I felt like I would have had a chance. But that was a reality not forthcoming in this fight. So that was definitely an issue for me, and just taught me a little bit. Like, one, I can bring in some pretty squishy damage dealers, but I have to be able to keep them alive. And if I'm going to bring in 2 damage dealers like this, one of them should probably be somebody that can survive the attack, so that if they don't ban either one of them, then I at least have somebody else in there that is going to survive their initial onslaught, right? 2 weak champions like Baron and Gorgid was not a smart approach for me. So this is where I would have loved to have a Pythion or a Mortu or somebody else, a little bit, a Magnar, a little bit tougher, a little bit tankier, so I can at least get some damage in on the enemy. Not to say that I would have won this fight, but I just can't have champions getting 1 shot left and right, and that's basically what happened here. And then we get to the 4th fight, or 5th fight. I don't know, the next fight. Again, not a successful run for me. But I figured, hey, why not? Let's go for it. You can see it can take a little bit to find the time. Also, you might have noticed, like, when you're selecting skills and stuff, it takes a little bit of time for them to actually happen and go active. Now this part, this draft part is interesting. It's not what I would say. It's more interesting and more exciting when you're doing it than I think watching it, because you have to, you're going through all the options in your head, and unless you've really spent the time figuring it out, it can be really, really burdensome. Now, I do forget, this is really annoying, I forget a lot to hit the confirm button, and that's very frustrating for me. Definitely something I need to get better at, like just remembering, oh yeah, confirm, so the other person can take their turn. And I'm not sitting here forever trying to select. This time I start off with Siphi though. I'm like, okay, we're gonna start off Siphi. I almost thought about doing the Sify Rotos combo like the other person, which I do think that kind of pairing is a great way to end it. You're going to see a lot of people do that with Venus and Cupidus, for example. That I think is a really smart approach. They're obviously going speed team, right? They go Arbiter as well as Sify. There's 2 speed champions. I'm like, okay, cool. I'm going to go more my traditional route. I got Kymar in there. I've got Sify in there. And then I'm trying to figure out who's my third approach here. You know, what do I want to do? Well, if I go Arbiter, I definitely have 2 things. I have a speed champion in either Arbiter or Sify, and I have a speed aura in either Kymar or Arbiter. So guaranteed that's going to happen. The only other thing I need is a damage dealer, right? So, you know, there's going to be 2 options for that, right? How I want to do that. And so that's going to be got to be my approach going into this. And they go Valkyrie, which tells me, okay, that's a problem. Valkyrie is always a bit of an issue, right? Because obviously with Sify, that's a big boost that they get, and they can interrupt me pretty easily. But I opt for Jorgid. He's probably my strongest damage dealer. He's abysmally slow. He's not super well built, so that's definitely a mistake. But I start with him, and then I go, oh, you know what? Let's just go classic. And I pick up Trunda, which I think is great. Trunda and Solus is a pretty solid combo. That way, regardless of whether it's Arbiter or Sify, I'm going to have someone with a damage buff to them. Right, Solus being defensive and getting the buff from Sify, Trunda being offensive, getting the buff from Arbiter. Now, in hindsight, I probably should have gone Ragash instead of Solus, because Ragash offers some, really strong debuffs, right, in that AoE stun and decreased defense. And that would have been actually a pretty nice combination there with Trunda, especially if I get him speed set so that he's going first and can set up Trunda. That would be a really nice combination, but it's not the case. Anyway, they ban Arbiter. That means we're going to be going defensive. Trunda's not going to have that bonus, but we do get the sleep from Kymar. Put him in the lead, and I'm like, okay, this is a wrap. This is simple. I got the speed, the sleep. The issue is I didn't think about what that meant for Trunda and her speed, right? That means Trunda's going first. She's going to crack that sleep ability, and this is where it can get a little bit dicey, right? Now, notice how fast their Sify is. I was like, well, I'll just sleep their Sify. I don't need a speed boost to anybody. I'll just sleep their Sify. Easy breezy. And here you can see everybody's asleep. I don't have any buffs out on my team. So I'm like, you know what? Maybe we just hit Sify and see if we can't kill her, knock her down. And here I go for the AoE. And honestly, we were very close to killing everybody. Very close. I could have just A1 that Sify, played it a little bit safer. Might have been a better approach. But this is the part that just bit me in the butt. Their Rotos is way too strong for any mortal being. Look at this. This literally just wipes my entire team. And because of that, because my Trunda got so low from dealing damage, there's some kind of reflect thing going on there. My whole team was dusted. It was so frustrating to see that. So frustrating. So anyway, that was the negative going on there, is that we ended up not winning. Now here you can see you can get some refills. Looks like you can get 1 refill every day, but you're only getting 1 refill, right? It's not a full refill. 1 extra fight. You get a arena battle refill every day. You get some milestone rewards as you progress up, which isn't bad, right? You're gonna end up getting that new champion eventually if you can get to milestone 10. There's a sacred shard at the end of it. Now, my guess is not everybody's gonna get that, because obviously you actually have to climb all the way into gold or something like that. It's a little bit frustrating. I hate how they gatekeep that stuff, but it is what it is. But that's the real-time arena. Hopefully you guys enjoyed that. I've been wanting to play some more, but there's some issues obviously with it. They're still beta testing, so a lot of this stuff is crashing and not always working, but I was able to get some runs in there, and I figured I'd show you guys what I could do in the meantime. This should hopefully get you guys really thinking about your team. I cannot emphasize this enough. You need 5 champions, and you need those 5 champions to work in synergy. If you take out one, does the team still work? You can plan for different scenarios. I think that is something you can do, but it's going to be hard to plan for every scenario out there. And so I really recommend have a 5-man team that no matter who gets taken out, it's going to work for you. I think that's going to be the best way to do it. Maybe even, you go, okay, I got a 3-man team, and then I got my last 2 picks. I can, flip a couple things around depending on what the opponent's chosen. It's not a bad way to go either, but kind of having that in mind, kind of what I did there with like the Arbiter, Sify, Kymar thing. No matter what, I knew I was going to have a speed team and I could go first, right? I had 2 speed auras, had 2 speed boosters, regardless of who got taken out. I was gonna have, you know, a speed aura and a booster on my team to ensure I got to go first. That can be really beneficial, right? And so I feel like, you know, it's that kind of thinking, that kind of approach to it that hopefully will, you know, work well for us, right? And in that case, I can just pick whatever 2 damage dealers I want, depending on the opponents I have, right? I could even go like a Countess Lix Astralon combo after that. A lot of approaches I can do after that kind of thing to get the success that I need out of it. But, you know, having that kind of approach to, you know, how you want to build it, you know, I would say looking in looking in trios, right? 3 support champions and figuring out which one you can do without, 2 damage dealing champions and figuring out, you know, if you only have one of them, can you survive with that? And if you have both of them, will they work together? I feel like those are kind of going to be the pairings and the coupling that we're going to want to be looking at, right? Looking at champions in terms of 3, in terms of 2, and then in terms of 5 overall is going to be kind of how we're going to break it down. So anyway, I wish you guys best of luck. It is fun. It's definitely fun. It's probably going to be a little frustrating at first, but if you don't take it too seriously and you recognize that we're all learning right now, it can be a lot of fun going into this. So I'm really looking forward to this. Anyway, guys, that's the video. Hopefully you guys are enjoying everything. And yeah, I don't know. I got nothing else for you. Hopefully also they change these time frames, because most of these time frames are not very attainable for me. So anyway, that's what we got going on right now. Guys, I appreciate you all. Till next we meet, I'm the Deadwood Jedi.